Welcome to the David Seaton Show, everyone. We have got a great show for you this evening on our first Sunday live. Remember, we are going live on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Later on in the show, we're going to be having a great conversation. We've got to look at what's going on in Chicago with these CVIs. There's a lot of violence that's going on right now in the city of Chicago that we want to talk about. We also want to have a quick conversation about what's going on with the TSA. Anyone who has flown recently knows all of the chaos that's going on with the TSA. And President Trump is actually trying to get around the Democrats who are being intransigent in Congress right now and holding up an actual bill to get them paid. We're going to talk about that later on in the show. But first, we have a very special guest tonight. She's been on the show before. We're going to bring her up in just a second. But first, as always, our show is being sponsored this evening by Maytag Laundry. Let me go ahead and play that promo for them really quickly, and then we're going to get to our first guest. I don't want to leave you waiting any longer than necessary, but let's go ahead and look at this promo from our sponsor. That is Maytag Laundry. That's a sponsor of our show tonight. So if you are a business out there, if you run a restaurant, if you own a bar, if you are a senior living facility, if you're a hospital that needs overflow work, spas especially, you can reach out to Maytag Laundry at www.maytaglaundryservice.com, and they will service you. They have a very, very great pickup and drop-off laundry service that services the Chicagoland area. So don't hesitate to reach out. And if you want to be a sponsor of the David Seaton Show, you are more than glad to reach out to the David Seaton Show at gmail.com. For those of you who are entering the room, we see you already. We appreciate everybody who is checking in right now. I see Patah. I see Savannah out in Ohio. I've got Glenn Scott checking in. Again, we appreciate everybody. Do me a favor, share the show, because we want to make sure that we have a really robust conversation with Republican nominee Christian Maxwell. I've gotten a chance to get to know her, and I really, really think that she deserves as much amplification to her campaign, and her policies as possible. If you are an individual out there who is dissatisfied with what the Democratic Party has done, then you really owe it to yourself to give her a look. We're going to bring her out onto the stage right now. Christian Maxwell, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me on your first Sunday live on your show. What an honor. What an honor.
Not at all. I was really, I sent you, I've got your email for your info at your campaign. So yes. I think I was communicating and congratulating you after your campaign. Yeah. I don't know what was happening. It looked like it bounced back, but I want to make sure you got that.
Oh, I did get it. Thank you so much for the congratulations and for the first time you even opened your platform to me. Like I said, when I saw your interview of Jonathan, I knew I was very impressed. I didn't know if I was like, let me get on there and see if I can hold my own with David, because he will go the distance. I knew I was offering myself up to a true interview. And like I said, you definitely make sure that you your commitment is to your audience. And I think that is the most honorable thing that you could ever do as a person who's stewarding a community. You're not here to make any of us feel great about ourselves. You are here to get answers, and that's wonderful.
No, I actually went back and tried to find that interview with Jonathan Jackson, and I don't know if Facebook deleted it but I couldn't find it, because I definitely wanted to bring that up. But I'm glad you brought up his name, because I want to share this with our listeners really quickly, just to show them the type of person who's actually holding that seat. I actually found this one of his signature achievements of bills that he sponsored is this Whole Milk for Healthy Kids of 2025. Apparently, this is some bill where the USDA regulated schools to feed children or give children fat-free or low-fat milk. And he wanted to make sure the kids had access to whole milk.
Yay, Jonathan.
I thought that was just so ridiculous when I read that's his big thing, is to make sure kids have whole milk.
He's hearing us. The generation that is probably the most lactose intolerant ever. Yes, that's what I want to give my kids. My kids who drink almond milk and oat milk pretty much every day. Thank you, Jonathan, for seeing me.
I know that's the main thing I was worried about, is where can I get my hands on some whole milk?
Man,
But congratulations, you are officially the Republican nominee for CD1. How do you feel having gotten the nomination?
I feel legitimate. I'm the kind of person where until I kind of check all the boxes, I don't feel legitimate in something. And I think that knowing that people have said they've given the ultimate okay to this race, that really just validates something for me. And it's just a boost of confidence. It truly is. So I feel completely emboldened to now go forth and do the work of actually going, against Jonathan Jackson. And it's not, with this whole race, this isn't about, some popularity contest. It's simply about the fact that Congressional District 1 is a high need district. It's probably one of the most high need districts in this state. And if you are not an intense person who has tons of energy for this work, like you just shown, his piece of advocacy is whole milk for kids in public school. Talk about missing the mark. Like, that's so irrelevant. It really is. It's so irrelevant.
And if you look at the map of CD1, it starts in Chicago and then it kind of goes out it kind of goes south, west into the suburbs. So quickly, outside of Chicago, what are the major suburbs that are in CD1?
So the major suburbs, you go out from the south side of Chicago you have some in Inglewood, and you have Auburn Gresham, Washington Park. But then you also you go into this area where you have a pinch of Evergreen Park, a pinch of, Mount Greenwood. Then you also have Oak Forest, and you have Midlothian, Posen. I believe we have a little bit of Robbins. You continue all the way out, and you have, Homer Glen. You have Frankfort, Mokina, go all the way up to Lockport and Lamont, and you have Shanahan over there. And then you go down into Wilmington. It's such a cluster of odd areas. Bourbonnais, Kankakee, a little bit of Joliet. It's literally everybody mashed together, and it is the most it's not cohesive at all. All of these people have needs that are so diverse and just so hard to address that if you don't have somebody who's incredibly diligent, you are destined to ignore 40 to 50% of the district. It's easy. It's super easy.
And just so you know, I've got someone right here, one of my loyal followers, correction officer. Awesome. He already posted. You have his vote.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't take that lightly at all. I truly appreciate it. If you can create 2 more of you, that's always my task. Create 2 more voters, please.
Yeah, everybody who's in the feed, people who are in the feed who follow me, generally speaking, are conservative, or at least they're
free thinkers.
Open to the free thinkers. Correct. I think that's a nice way to put it.
Yes.
Free thinkers. So for everyone who's in the feed, do me a favor, just share this feed with 3 people so that if they haven't been introduced to Christian Maxwell, they'll get a chance to know her tonight. I was speaking on WVON on the primary night, and Jesse Jackson Jr., he lost. And I said on the actual station, I think this is one of the reasons why we might have parted ways.
Yes.
I asked the question, you can't tell me out of 700,000 constituents that they couldn't find one person who wasn't a felon. So I think he was hoping that he was going to get some sympathy for his father just having passed.
I think so.
So condolences to the Jackson family. Jesse Jackson was a giant. That said, any sympathy vote for that will long have since waned by the time we get to November. So that being said, what do you think? What's your number one strategy to compete against Jonathan Jackson?
My number one strategy is staying focused on real people problems. And I know that sounds overly simplified, but staying focused on real people problems is the job. And too many politicians on both sides of the aisle quickly forget about those true issues that at the end of the night, when people have worked their, job, they've cooked dinner, what is keeping Illinoisans and Chicagoans up at night? I'm very intimately aware of those things because sometimes they keep me up. It's wondering if your kids are achieving enough academically. My children happen to be homeschooled because in public school, they were not achieving enough academically. So I took it upon myself to see how I could be a conduit to change that. It's things as far as, is my car even safe and outside in front of my building? Just this morning, we went to our vehicle to go get some groceries and we realized it had been gone through, by somebody overnight. So, if you lock your doors, they'll break your windows. And if you don't lock your doors, they're going to go through your vehicle to see if there's anything they can take. So you're kind of messed up on both sides. The things that Chicagoans are dealing with right now, people just want to be able to focus on, their future and, seeing what their retirement's going to look like. What is their kids' life going to look like? But they keep being distracted forcibly by the mismanagement of this city, the over dedication to people who are not even citizens of Chicago, Illinois, or even the US. Like those people should not even begin to be a priority for the city when the city is struggling to take care of Chicagoans. We regular people just want Chicago leadership to do their job. We want Illinois leadership to do their job. And we want the Congress people who are responsible for the state to advocate for states like Illinois. If they start crafting legislation that addresses the education issues we have, that address the overtaxation issues, that address the lack of access to entrepreneurship, and also address the issues with our access to our First and Second Amendment rights, because under Biden, we saw an attack on free speech like nothing I've ever seen before. Biden was in cahoots with Google, YouTube, which is Google. They were in cahoots with every social media platform. Even Facebook had to admit that they were working with the Biden administration to censor anybody who said anything negative about Biden. Our First Amendment right is one of the most precious rights you could ever have. And that's why they made the Second Amendment right to protect it, because they knew it would be under threat. So to have an administration that didn't value that is immensely problematic. So the things that I believe people want me to focus on, for one, I'm going to continually ask people. I'm going to make sure I'm in the community as much as possible, all the communities, not just one over the other. I'm going to make sure I'm consistently asking to understand, how can I serve better? Because a congressperson is a servant, is a public servant. Anybody who gets hung up on the leadership of it and feeling like they're the leader of all of us, you're approaching it from the wrong lens. You are a public servant, and the job is to go to DC and to think like the people you represent. What would they want you to do? What legislation would they want you to write? And how would they want you to vote? That is the job. That's it. So if I'm approaching it that way, it's going to move the needle for people. That's what they want. They want a public servant, not an oligarchy like the Jacksons. People are fatigued with that. And I think they showed Jesse Jackson that with that vote. They don't really want some generational family treating Chicago like a fiefdom. This is not your kingdom to rule over. That's not what this is.
Virtual Reality 512 just posted, I voted for Ms. Christian Maxwell. So you've got at least 2 confirmed votes of people who are in your district in the feed right now.
I need that. And we just need people to be open-minded. And here's the thing, I respect somebody deciding that I'm not the best fit for them. I 100% respect that. And I'm okay with that. I just want you to exercise your right to choose. You should have a right to choose between 2 qualified candidates who are passionate about doing the job.
You're absolutely right. You mentioned the Second Amendment, and I am a Second Amendment person. I'm a big gun person. Yeah. I lament that PICA that was passed in Illinois. I just talked to a friend of mine the other day, someone with whom I work. He lives in Florida, and both of us bought Beretta A300 Ultimate Patrol shotguns.
Okay.
But in Florida, he can buy the 7+1 version of the gun. In Illinois, I can only buy the 5+1.
Yes.
So somehow Democrats have convinced themselves that if we can curtail the rights of law-abiding citizens, somehow that makes all of us safe. But criminals don't obey the law.
Ever.
Criminals are not going to obey the magazine laws or the restrictions on certain guns. What's wrong with this approach? What what's your critique of the Democratic approach
Mhm.
that they know better? That's why we sometimes refer to them as the nanny state.
Yeah.
They do not respect, like you said, the First and Second Amendments to the Constitution.
Mhm. I always remind myself of this one thing. When Democrats talk about gun control and all of that, they ignore the reality of so many families across Illinois. So I think about myself as a kid. My mother raised me and my brother, and she was a single parent. We lived in East St. Louis for some of my life, and then we moved, up the hill, into Fairview and Belleville. But one thing that I always knew as a kid growing up is that if I ever heard any weird sound in our home, I never worried about if my mom could keep us safe. I knew she could because my mother was a veteran and she was also a very proud gun owner. Like I knew she could keep us safe. And I think that for a lot of these legislators who live in areas where that's not a concern for them, many women who may be leading their households all across this state deserve the right to keep their families safe. And for families in general, even if it's not just a single parent led household, they deserve the right to be able to keep their families safe and not have to pull out some giant Bible of rules on how they can protect their home from any type of outside danger, especially considering Chicago and Mayor Brandon have not done their job to actually staff CPD adequately. Right now, CPD is still, I've been talking about this for almost 2 years. CPD is still down thousands of officers. And what we continue to see is that with the officers they do have, they prioritize them in non-Black areas. And I know that's going to sound like a wild claim, but for a lot of people, if you live in a non-Black area, you're probably aware of this. Like they are very much so focused on making sure that certain socioeconomic groups are more protected than others. They prioritize keeping downtown safe and then leave the South Side with 30-minute plus response times. And this is not a CPD, the officer issue. This is a Mayor Brandon. This is the apparatus behind the CPD. I do not blame the actual police officers. I don't, because I think many of them would love to do the job of keeping this city safe from crime,
Sure.
repeated crime. But I do believe that, as Mayor Brandon has said, he says that incarceration, police officers are a sickness. He called them a sickness.
Yeah.
And he believes that incarceration is actually just not something we should ever do. So he is actually okay with offenders re-offending 50 plus times and being, some of these people have arrest records where they've literally been arrested 50 times. The average person of any race in this city has not been arrested 50 plus times. So to prioritize somebody who has, that is the most negligent thing this city could ever do, especially for women. I'm always thinking about vulnerable women like my mom. That's not fair to the woman who has to take the CTA. That's not fair to the woman waiting on a bus stop. It's not fair to the woman just trying to go get some groceries with her kids. The city has a job to do and they're not doing it. So with all these overly aggressive laws, all they do is restrain law-abiding citizens and make it easier for you to go to jail. It's really easy to go to jail for using your Second Amendment right in Illinois, and people don't realize that. In Texas, your car is an extension of your castle. Here, it's not. You cannot protect your car. You can't protect it the way that you could in Texas.
No, I'm a concealed carry license holder, and
hard to get.
Well, more importantly, the laws, to your point, are so circuitous and they're so onerous that you almost have, if someone breaks in your home, you almost have to take fire from them before you would even be able to defend yourself, because the laws in Illinois are pro-immigrant, pro-criminal, pro-taxes, pro-regulation. And I just can't, it infuriates me when I try to have conversations with people who are dyed blue Democrats, and I try to just bring up those points. They are so impervious to facts. It is just infuriating. But
they
Second
trust
Amendment,
the Democratic Party. They trust them so much. And they're like, oh, they wouldn't do that. Because I've had Democrats tell me, I love my Second Amendment rights and I own a gun. And it's like, well, that's kind of crazy, because if you actually love your Second Amendment right, you could never co-sign for the Democratic Party in Illinois. Never. They just tried to put through, we had to literally deploy an entire campaign against the Democratic Party in Springfield. They wanted to push through legislation that was going to put a 5-cent tax on every unit of ammunition. They also wanted to put a serial number on the ammunition. If you force ammunition to be serialized, you basically ban ammunition. And on top of that, they wanted to make it illegal for you to give a box of ammo to the next person. if it's not serialized. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like it's a war on your Second Amendment right, and it's so intensive here. Like you can't love your Second Amendment right and vote Democrat here, unfortunately.
And to your point about that serialization law, I
Mhm.
read most recently that it's died, so it doesn't look like
Yep.
it's going to move forward.
Yep.
But the woman who actually sponsored or wrote that bill or sponsored that bill,
Mhm.
she's a 34-year-old woman who lives in Naperville. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Just the amount of money
Mhm.
that ammunition manufacturers would have to
Yes.
spend to retool their
Yes.
machinery to put unique identifying serial numbers on every cartridge and bullet. They were basically just making it too onerous, so people would just say, "Hey, I'm not going to sell ammunition in the state of Illinois." That's their backdoor way to
Yes.
try and take away people's Second Amendment rights.
Mhm.
And it's just infuriating because, to your point, a J.B. Pritzker,
Mhm.
who's a billionaire, who
Mhm.
has security all the time, who's never in an area where he's by himself, where he might
Mhm.
have to be concerned about
No.
self-defense. To him, yeah, it makes perfect sense because he's being controlled by this far left group who
Yes.
look at the Second Amendment as something that needs to be taken out of the Constitution. Hopefully, SCOTUS will step into this,
I hope
and
so too.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to them because it's getting really really out of hand. To your
Mhm.
earlier point, and I don't want to belabor the issue.
Yeah.
Patah, he's a follower of the show. He just posted that when he moved back to Illinois from Ohio, he had a
Mhm.
12 gauge shotgun with a pump grip,
Yep.
and Illinois told him it was a felony to have, and it is.
Yes.
And
You can become a criminal over like the moment you cross into. That's why a lot of people who really are like big on guns, they don't even like to drive through Illinois because the moment you cross Illinois state lines, you can immediately become a criminal based on what you own. So
yes,
you have to know the laws. If you have a gun, study those laws and make sure you're on top of it because they're very intricate.
very much so. Like
Mhm.
I said a moment ago, like you just said, you can be driving from Iowa to
Mhm.
Indiana, crossing through Illinois, and your firearm is legal in both Iowa and
Yeah.
Indiana. But if you get pulled over in Illinois,
Oh man. Even the way you even have it in your car, like you have to change how you have it in your car the moment you get into Illinois. Like you can't just have it in a certain like some states you can have it by your side. You know, you drive through Illinois, you might need to put it inside of a case. It needs to be locked. The cartridge needs to be out of it. It's all types of crazy stuff that changes the moment you come into Illinois because they've put so many restrictions on guns without seeing any real decrease in gun violence.
let me read a couple of more comments. Correctional officer posted, please make sure you contact
Okay.
John Catanzara,
Yeah.
president of FOP Lodge. You know that? You know him?
Yes. Yes, I've heard of
Oh,
him.
okay. And
Yeah.
Patah asked, what are some of the key issues that set
Mhm.
you apart from Jonathan Jackson? That's a great question.
Mhm.
So
So some
let's talk about the top three things that separate
yeah.
you from Jonathan Jackson.
So some of the three issues that separate me from Jonathan Jackson are going to be the way that I focus on families in general, entrepreneurship, and then also focus on veterans. So when we look at the way that he's done legislation, Jonathan has not really had focused pillars for much of his legislation. He's had some just most of his bills he's done have been these things basically like memorandums where you just acknowledge a day in history or things of that nature. He spends a lot of time on those, which is he's more like a historian or a librarian. He probably would have been better at that. But the things that I'm going to focus intensely on are ensuring that families in this state who are looking at that real middle area of earnings, I really want to see how more of their taxable income can be protected. Right now, we see that Illinois has access to so much of people's income, and the amount of taxation that people are being subjected to is very punitive. So if we have a congressperson who's going to see how they can create more exemptions for people in that middle income area, that puts more of your earnings and more of your wealth back in your pocket. The thing with Jonathan Jackson, I have not seen any legislation from him that focuses on that true middle income earner. A lot of his legislation only focuses on people who are at the very, very bottom and people who are not necessarily earning income. He focuses on things like Medicaid, Social Security, and that's really like the extent of it. But I really do want to incentivize people who are, small business owners, or people who, have two parents working in the household, or one parent working in the household, and they just need to catch a break. Those are the people that I really want to be focusing on, to make sure that their home becomes something that's truly a benefit to them and not a detriment, because home ownership is becoming a shackle in Illinois because of aggressive property taxes. We don't see enough being done at the federal level to counteract the taxation for property taxes. As far as veterans, my policies would be very different from Jonathan Jackson's, because I really do want to make it easy for veterans to matriculate out of the military back into society. Veterans learn so much and acquire so many different skill sets inside of the military. So I really do want to foster a great deal of legislation that will make it where that those certifications they earn in the military, they automatically convert into certifications and things of that nature once they matriculate out of the military, so they can have a smooth transition and not get lost in the chaos, because they've already done, the ultimate duty by many of us. Entrepreneurship is another key area that I want to see a lot more investment in for Americans, Chicagoans, and Illinoisans. I really do want to see how we can leverage private industry to make entrepreneurship much more accessible to citizens in this state. What we have seen is that entrepreneurship has become very accessible to illegal aliens and non-citizens. Business grants and all types of things have flowed, even housing. There are, realtors in the state, and I've actually outed some of them on social media, but they were specifically pushing loan programs to people who were non-citizens. And I know for a fact, because in the language it said if you have an I-10, and I-10 is not a social. So that's right. Specifically saying that you're going to smooth the pathway for non-citizens to get into home ownership.
Stop right there. The state of Illinois passed a law that illegal immigrants can get state-funded financial aid to go to school.
UIC specifically is a big proponent of that. They have an entire, if you go to their financial aid website, there's a whole page and everything dedicated to making sure that if you are I think they could refer to them as a non-citizen, which is fine. But they refer to them that way. And they make sure that they can smooth the path and get you finances in order to go to school. And what we see is that Chicagoans and Illinoisans are actually struggling to get into schools like UIC and UC. Many people have given me anecdotal evidence. And I mean, by many, I mean hundreds of people have commented on videos about that, saying that their child struggled and did not actually get into these schools. But I just went to the engineering graduation for UIC just recently, and it was flooded with people's last names who were not American at all. And at the end, they actually ended it with a nod or an acknowledgement of Palestine. That was the way they concluded the entire, engineering graduation. So,
sure.
Let
me ask you a deeper question about that, though, because the birth rate in the United States right now is 1.6.
Yes.
Around 1.6. It needs to be 2.1 in order to maintain the size of your population. And just so people understand, when we say the birth rate needs to be 2.1, that means that for every child that's born, obviously they have a father and a mother. Those two people are going to eventually die. So on average, you need to have 2.1 births for every woman to maintain, and it's 2.1 because not every child lives, to see their 18th birthday.
Yeah.
So our birth rate is at 1.6. We've got, we've still got people from the silent generation who are still alive. The last of the baby boomers are about to retire. And we only have one person working for every one person who's receiving Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, what have you. The only two ways to increase your population is to either incentivize people to have children or immigration. So is there a way to incentivize people to have families so we don't have to lean so much on immigration? Because the Democratic point of view, their philosophy is just create these programs and take more taxes from people to fund it. That's unsustainable. But so we do need to, and as you get to these younger generations, people are just having fewer children because the cost.
It's too hard.
Yes. So does the government have a responsibility to incentivize people to have families so we don't have to depend so much on immigration? And what would that philosophy be?
The government most definitely has a responsibility to do that. That's why CPS is taking $30,000 per student to keep their lights on in these schools across the city. If this is why I always make sure I refer to the multiple levels of government that exist even around an office like what I'm pursuing. If we can make school actually functional, so many parents are choosing or being forced to choose private school simply because school systems like CPS, which is not unique around the US, multiple school systems inside of Democratic ran urban areas are failing and have failed. And that's where a lot of times African Americans live in a lot of these urban sectors. Most of the African American population lives in and around urban big cities. So if we can fix the public school systems in these areas, you automatically start to enthuse people about the prospect of having children, because educating that child just became $10,000 less per year. Private school by itself is on average usually about $6,000 and up per kid. That is an automatic deterrent to having children. When you add on top of that the one piece of legislation I want to work on as well is ensuring that insurance companies, or putting more pressure on insurance companies to cover alternative birthing systems and methods. Right now, we see that insurance companies give a lot of pushback about things like birth centers, which typically are much less expensive than a traditional in-hospital birth. Some people are walking away from hospitals with $10,000+ bills because of repeated C-sections and things of that nature. We know also that women typically have better outcomes inside of midwifery care than they do inside of traditional health care. Women get steamrolled really quickly into C-sections. And many times people will put pressure on me and ask about things like the Black maternal death rate and things of that nature. People want to see a lot of, Black focused legislation from me. I'm looking at people from the women. When women go into hospitals, women get funneled into C-sections quickly. And when we also address other issues as far as all the other health disparities that we see inside of the Black community, those same women getting pushed into C-sections, one is going to have a pinch better outcome because she's also not struggling with some of the health disparities that we see a lot of Black people struggling with. So we have to start to address a lot of the things that make being a parent brutal. You can't start off, your whole relationship with your child with debt. We also can't continue to feed Americans in general really poor food, which makes it very hard for them to naturally conceive. If you have to pay for in vitro and now your baby, it's not just a free baby, it's a $30,000 baby, you feel different about that baby. It's different. So we really do have to start to back into what has caused being a parent to be so brutal and so hard. And we have to ask uncomfortable questions, which is why I'm a big proponent of what RFK is doing. He's asking uncomfortable questions like, why is our food so bad? And why is Europe not feeding their citizens the same food that we are readily served here in America with no questions asked?
You are making such a great point. And I want to specifically, because this is a circle that a lot of people don't recognize. Mm-hmm. When you give somebody SNAP benefits, and then they go out and they buy whatever, they buy more processed food because it tends to be cheaper on the margins. It leads to obesity. Obesity is one of the largest contributing factors to maternal mortality, or that when women, and that's another thing that we often don't discuss, is that in the Black community, Black women compared to Latino, white, and Asian women are, I think the last figure that I read in blackdemographics.com, so anyone out there can feel free to go to that website and check it. 58% of Black women are overweight, and then 90% of them are obese. So we've got this cycle where they're using SNAP benefits, they're buying unhealthy food, it's causing these poor health outcomes, and then they go get on Medicaid, and then we wind up spending more money on Medicaid. And so when you have the Trump administration come out and say, hey, you can't use your SNAP benefits to buy sugar or sugary foods, and everyone's offended. Oh, that's racist. No, this is about, if I'm picking up the tab, that I get a say in what it is you spend your money on, and it's going to have the long-term benefit of you being healthier in the long run. What's because
the government shouldn't sponsor your destruction. You shouldn't want for the government to sponsor your destruction. These foods a lot of these processed foods, they are tied to cancer. Many of them have been proven to be cancer causing. And also when we think about things like the amount of red dye that's in a lot of processed foods, especially like the sugary items, those are known to make little boys more aggressive and make kids more hyperactive. And what do they continually accuse little Black boys of being? Super hyper, very aggressive. It's like we have to really start to back into, well, what is causing a lot of the struggles that we see in the Black community, and why is nobody asking questions about that? But they're more so just advocating for us to have more access to our destruction. I want to see our neighborhoods have grocery stores again. Most people live in food deserts across the U.S., and that is one of the most destructive things you can do to a family in general, is not give them access to fresh, healthy foods. When we also think about Black culture in general, many Black families across the U.S. have lost access to their cultural food, things that we grew up eating because we had, a grandmother who was, cooking all of these meals for us. I know, like for me, I did grow up it was more than likely a little bit lower income, but my grandmother cooked every meal, and my mom also would cook a great deal. So even if we weren't eating, we didn't have McDonald's money a lot, but my grandmother always had a pot of greens in the fridge with some cornbread and, some baked chicken. So I grew up eating, and I was eating chicken livers and, things like that too, because we were more Southern. But, I ate real food a lot, and I've never struggled with weight either. So when you have to start to think about those things that are causing us to be our own worst enemy, we have to get a taste for, our more cultural foods that were also, they weren't as bad as people try to make them out to be now. Like soul food wasn't as destructive as all of the processed foods we're eating right now. Having some real potatoes and, real greens and, real meats. We have to start doing that again and kind of get back close to the, that style of eating, because right now we shouldn't be having all of these dialysis clinics all over the city. That's one of the biggest business booms I've seen in Chicago is the dialysis clinics. That means that people have kidney disease. And more than likely means we have a lot of diabetes that's upticking even more. And we have a lot of ABA clinics, so a lot of kids with autism. So we have a health crisis, and none of the officials that should be advocating for that, like, Brandon Johnson likes to talk, performatively about advocating for Black people. I don't see him having any real conversations about the Black health crisis or anything of that nature. But then you have people like me and you, and they'll accuse us of not loving Black people. I'm like, I think that is the most backwards thing ever, because loving somebody is being truthful and clear and real with them about what is going to honestly improve their life. And I want to see improvement in all demographics in this area. People shouldn't be dying from kidney disease because they're being fed, all the things that people are consistently being fed here. We're not having grocery stores booming and wanting to come to the city. We lost how many Dominics? What was it, like 100 Dominics that pulled out of the city? And then you had Walmart pulled out of the city, multiple Targets pulled out of the city.
But that goes to a deeper question. Let's zero this in really quickly on Black America, and we'll say Black Chicago. Yeah. You just mentioned Dominick's, Whole Foods, Target, grocery deserts. And when you listen to Brandon Johnson would say, the reason that we have food deserts or pharmacy deserts is because of disinvestment. I respond to that and say, the reason the disinvestment happened is because if you open a store in a poor Black neighborhood, let's just say a Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, what have you. If your stores are being robbed by the people who live in the area, and then the majority of the people who come in and use the pharmacies are on Medicaid, which only pays 65%, and you have to wait twice as long to get the reimbursement from the federal government, you're not going to be profitable. The stores don't owe it, businesses don't open because of morality. They open to make money. But here's what I also say to people who talk about food deserts and pharmacy deserts in Black Chicago. There are no liquor store deserts.
Oh, no. There is
because it's about supply and demand. Yes. So we need I'm a big advocate of, we need a cultural renaissance in the Black community about prioritizing education, not having children out of wedlock, getting married, not smoking cannabis. Cannabis, I think, is probably the biggest thing I've come to this point. Cannabis is destroying a generation of inner city Black children, because the cannabis back in the 1960s at Woodstock, it had 3 or 4% THC. Today it's 35 and as high as 90, but it's become so socially acceptable, and they were wondering why these kids are acting so crazy. We need a moral renaissance in the Black community to address a lot of these issues that are not being addressed.
Yeah, we have to have, like you said, we have to have real and honest conversations that are rooted in love. And, talk about go the distance in the conversation as well, because it's very easy to get offended and then want to pull out of the dialogue. But you have to push through and really, truly unpack, why are we having all the struggles that we seem to be having? Like you said, there's no shortage of liquor stores. There's one on every corner. So why are we not also seeing a community garden? And it's hard to, people be like, oh, we have some. You got to have a system that's also reflective of the weather that we have in Chicago, because if we don't have grocery stores that are very prevalent, community gardens are only going to be productive for a very small part of the year. We have to also have grocery stores that want to invest here, but we have to make sure we're also investing in that relationship. Any business interaction is two-way, and for grocery stores, their margins are so small. Margin is the amount of money you make after as far as profit on a product, and the only way they can pay their employees and the only way they can stay open is if they have a decent enough margin to make it make sense. Chicago has worked aggressively against businesses in general with the overtaxing of multiple industries and multiple business owners. They've made it where Chicago is just not business friendly at all. And that doesn't hurt the 1% like they tell us. It hurts the 99% actually, because we do need those services that these business owners provide. Chicago has robbed many communities of having access to what they should have access to as basic needs. Many people across the city do not have their basic needs met because Chicago is not doing the work of doing that. And here's how I know Chicago could do it. When we had the illegal aliens and they were just opening up shelter after shelter, they were paying some of these shelters, I think it was like upwards of like $100,000+ a month to house illegal aliens. And they were converting hotels quickly into shelters. I mean, they were getting so innovative, taking properties that were on the lakefront, giving people a view of the lake, for free. And to see the city innovate so quickly, they're printing signs talking about this is an ICE-free zone. That shows me that the city could actually mobilize quite quickly to help Chicagoans if they wanted to, but they don't. And that is what is not acceptable in my book. It's not acceptable for you to see kids all across this city and out, into Illinois, which is Pritzker's issue. It's not acceptable to see these kids not able to read, to see them facing health disparities they shouldn't be facing because we have lead-filled pipes and schools still covered in lead, and you have mold in a lot of the buildings and things all across the city because the city is not maintaining itself. Much of the infrastructure is failing. Chicago is not being diligent about the actual work of managing Chicago. And by Chicago, I mean mayors like Lori Lightfoot, Brandon Johnson, and all these other performative people who have chosen to make that position something that's more about, advocating for national level issues. Chicago is a city that needs a diligent Chicago-focused mayor. And Illinois needs a diligent Illinois-focused mayor, not a mayor who's worried about how he can become president or buy a presidential seat. That's not okay.
Here's I think the biggest challenge. I think in CD1, you put up Jonathan Jackson and you put up Christian Maxwell, and just listen, and both of them just listen to you. The constituents listen to both of you. I think you are an attractive, compelling candidate with a compelling message. The Democrats, however, have done a masterful job of convincing people in general and Black people specifically that all Republicans are racist. And for a Black Republican, they've done a very masterful job of convincing the average voter that if you're a Black Republican, that something's wrong with you.
Your special flavor of sellout and you hate yourself.
Right. So that said, what do you think? How do you overcome this misperception by the lay individual who's been hearing this message now for 60 years that Republicans are racist? You've got to overcome that impediment before you can reach a larger audience. Now there are, you've got Chicago Red, you've got, people like Zoe and Danny Carter and Patricia Easley. You've got plenty of people out there who are completely open and receptive to the Republican Party, but you've got to make those inroads in Cook and those collar counties to win, to win north of I-80. What's your strategy for that?
So my strategy for that is making sure that we actually do the work. The pillars of my campaign are different from a typical campaign. So in April, actually, for our first South Shore event, we're going to be doing a phonics and literacy themed community engagement, because I don't want to just wait till I get to Congress to start addressing some of the issues and disparities that I see in my own community. So as a Republican, we have to walk the walk. And I think that if we're going to say that we're a party that's different and we're actually focused on making sure that we close the gaps, then we actually truly show love and kindness to people by empowering them with knowledge instead of just giving them a quick check so they can shut up. We have to actually do that work from the start to show people that there is truly a difference, because if not, it just looks like talk. So with my campaign, I plan to really show people that right now, even if you go on my website, you can download free literacy tools and things from our website. And I plan to continue to make things like that accessible. I will also be doing entrepreneurship themed community events where people can meet me, but also learn about how to gain access to entrepreneurship before I ever write a piece of legislation. So this campaign is not going to be your usual campaign where somebody just, runs a giant, I'm so great, and, this is why I'm so great, come talk to me and, listen to that. I want to actually show you what it looks like to have me as a congresswoman through the evidence of this campaign. And at the end of the day, like I said, I hope and pray that I do win, because I know that I would make a tremendous impact on this district. But my goal with this campaign is to leave a positive footprint on this district. And I'm going to stay committed to that until the very end. So I think that people do have to walk the walk, but all politicians on all sides should be doing that and not just talking about it. That's why when I accosted Robin Kelly in Valois here in Hyde Park, I asked her, she chaired a whole committee on entrepreneurship. And I asked her this question. I said, Robin, what have you specifically done to make entrepreneurship more accessible for people in this district or in your district, Congressional District 2? Because I've driven through Congressional District 2 and it's filled with dilapidated, closed businesses. She couldn't answer the question. She told me, I can't just answer it off the top of my head. You should be able to, Robin. If you've chaired a committee about entrepreneurship, you should be able to answer that simple question. And she could not answer it because she has not done anything to facilitate more access to entrepreneurship for people in her district. She failed them, which is why I'm so glad she did not win that nomination for the Senate seat. I also don't like who did win. I mean, I don't like anybody on the Democratic side. It was all ridiculous. But people have to actually start showing the fruit of what they want to do.
Yeah, I said that on election night as well, that Juliana Stratton, she was losing by double digits as late as January. And what turned her campaign around was the F Trump campaign and telling people, I'm going to raise the federal minimum wage to $25, and which again, it's so frustrating to me that so many people are such low information voters that they can be emotionally manipulated. If you made if the federal minimum wage was $25 tomorrow, more than 50% of small businesses would close overnight.
Be destroyed. And here's the thing, people, like I said, a lot of people have a lot of, accusations for me. I'm really appalled that nobody thought it was problematic that in order for her to get the buy-in of many white Democratic voters, she had to become vulgar. She had to become a vulgar Black woman in order to get their buy-in. Nobody saw that as problematic. She had to become a cussing, vulgar Black woman, debase herself in order to get that nomination. And nobody said a word. I don't curse at all anywhere through my campaign. I run a dignified, high quality, classy campaign. And Republicans don't want me to, they actually get upset even when I get a little too crass sometimes. Like they expect class from me. But the Democrats, they were like, oh, great. Finally, you've debased yourself for us. Here you go. And nobody.
And they're only doing that because their perception is that it's worked for Trump. But Trump appeals to a completely different demographic than the Democrats. So emulating,
and a lot of people don't even like that Trump is that vulgar sometimes. Like it's not always well received that he's that vulgar. Like that's not why I didn't vote for Trump, because he's vulgar. I didn't vote for him for that at all. So it's like that's a giant misconception. And I think the Democrats need to stop copying what they think is working. Like, let's just say the F word. Like that's so juvenile and it's really weird and condescending. It's like Kamala having women come twerk for her event and then
Yes.
have an abortion bus outside. Like, that's what you think Black women are
Yes.
twerking in an abortion
Yes.
bus? Like, it was horrendous.
I think this is just my opinion. I want to go to one more question that's in the chat, but I think the opportunity for the Republican Party is to come out and to just say the things that you and I are saying right now, to say to Black America, because, and I'm specifically saying Black America because that's the inroads that the Republican Party needs to make. And I think they have just kind of disregarded even making the attempt, because 90+% of Black women vote for the Democratic Party, and it's in the high 80s for Black men. But I think if the Republican Party just came out and just said, "Hey, we're not going. You don't have to twerk. You don't have to get an abortion. No. You don't have to go to jail. You don't have to not graduate from high school. You can. We're going to give you the opportunity to become the best version of yourself."
Yes.
Rather than the Democratic solution, which is, it's not your fault, it's racism, so take this check and this free stuff.
It's okay that you're broken. We know you're broken. You're always going to be broken. So we don't expect anything. It's the most evil thing you can. It's the meanest way you could treat Black people ever.
I'll use this example before I go to this question in the chat. When Gavin Newsom came out a few weeks ago, it was about last month, he was down in Atlanta and he was talking to this church group. And he said to this mostly group of Black people, "Hey, I got a 960 on the SAT. I'm just like you."
It was so interesting.
He got immediately attacked and was saying, he's a racist, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But then I went and looked it up because I'm not emotionally wired like that. Yeah. When I looked it up, do you know what the average SAT score for Black people is? 907. 907. Yeah. So when he made that, he knew that. When he made that statement, he knew that the average score was 907. So he was trying to make this connection. But that's my point, is that we play this race game so much, and it's not even about that. But it's the same money that you and I need to make to pay our mortgage and to educate our children and pay our health insurance is the same thing that you need if you're white or Latino or Asian.
The needs don't change.
Yes. Pata asked another question, a really good question that he and a correctional officer want to know. What is the major issue with the Republican Party in Illinois that they cannot overcome the Democratic Party? What do you, and it's basically north of I-80. When you get south of I-80 in Illinois, it's all, with the exception of the college towns, it's all Republican. So how does the Republican Party make inroads into Illinois and Cook and the 5 surrounding collar counties?
So there's two things that the Republican Party, we have to think about the behavior of the Republican Party. So when you think about a Republican, people typically become Republican later in life. So this is a person who may have a more established life, more responsibilities, less free time. So that's the first thing I want to point out. The second thing I want to point out is that when we think about the landscape of the Republican Party being able to really, truly get into the nitty gritty of talking about more racially focused issues and concerns, that has become a landmine situation that was designed that way for a reason. So let me kind of talk about on the other side. The Democratic Party is very good at attracting the kind of young, free-flowing. I always tell people, I say people go through their like kind of young and crazy Democrat phase. You're like, they're empowering me to kind of be wild and free. And I like that. So they attract a younger person who doesn't have as many commitments, is more loose with what they'll do, like going into neighborhoods that are a little bit rougher, like urban areas, and canvassing with the clipboard saying, "Hey, I'm here to talk about Julia Stratton," and they're in Inglewood. You can send a young person into Inglewood and they're like, "Oh, this is so exhilarating." An older person is not as likely to go and canvass in an area like maybe Inglewood unless they know that they're going to have a safe experience. So when you think about the parties from that perspective, going into the urban sector is harder because they don't have as many volunteers that are young or that are willing to go and canvass all throughout the city just based on their immediate mindset. But like I said, the other key issue is that Democrats have made race such a charged conversation that most people are scared to even wade into it. But the one thing I will also say is that for many Republicans, they don't automatically just think about your race the way you would think. And a lot of times they really are looking to connect on something besides race. They don't really want to just connect based on, what your race is and just see you that way. Here's a quick thing I want to remind people of. I'm actually from downstate Illinois. I'm from St. Clair County. I'm not from Chicago. When I moved to Chicago, I remember I was like, I have never seen a city that's as segregated as this city. This northern experience between races is something that is incredibly unique. When you leave outside of the Chicagoland area, people interact so differently. It's incredibly different. So the racially charged environment that you see here in Chicago, it was designed that way. And it makes it easier for the Democratic Party to rule and reign in this state because of the institutionalized dysfunction that was created by Democrats decades ago. Redlining is not because of Republicans. Redlining is because of Democrats. There was Democrats in ruling the city when redlining was implemented. So all of this separation between the groups and all of the dysfunction that a lot of people, talk about when, today they're like, well, why is everything so hard, as far as getting Republicans into the city? It's been designed to separate it out that way, especially with the gerrymandering as well. So like districts like mine, they put a portion of Chicago in it to keep it blue. It makes it much easier for it to stay blue because a good amount of the population is Democratic and it lives in the city. But the cool thing is that this district has gone from being a D+36 or something of that nature, which means it votes 36 points more Democratic than the rest of the country. It's now only a D+18. And I know that still sounds a lot, but there has been a massive decrease in how Democratic this district votes. So what we're seeing is that districts all across the state are softening and the commitment to the Democratic Party is waning. But we do need to have more young people come into the Republican Party to infuse it with more volunteers, because volunteers are the lifeblood of the Democratic Party. Sometimes they can knock every door in their districts twice. Wow. Republicans sometimes are even knocking a fourth of the doors. And it's not because they don't want to. It's because they don't have the manpower, and the amount of revenue that is on the Democratic side is tremendous, guys. Like they are raising, I think Jonathan Jackson has raised probably like over almost $300,000 already. I've raised under 40, but my social media has grown from 50,000 followers on one page to almost over 200,000 on 4 pages. So the way I've spent my money has been so economical, and I've been very frugal with my investment, whereas he hasn't even started campaigning yet he spent almost 200. I think he's already spent like over $100,000, and we haven't seen a single piece of campaign material come out. He had one billboard that went through the city, one billboard campaign. So when we look at how they raise tons and tons of money, we have to get more money on the Republican side. We have to get more volunteers on the Republican side. And we also have to make sure that we kind of, make sure people are willing to talk about race and, really address what's really going on and not be scared to get it a little bit wrong. And then, Black people have to give people a little bit more grace to get it a little bit wrong, because the Democrats have kept people separated for a very long time. So it's going to be a little choppy initially. You got to give people grace to kind of figure out like, hey, what is going on and how can I help? Because I do want to help. I just don't know how to help. And that's where— To your
point, I just want to share with people, this is Jonathan Jackson's YouTube page, and he has 1,800 subscribers, 18.1, so 1,810 subscribers. So yeah, I mean, he's basically campaigning off of just name recognition.
That's it.
That his last name is Jackson. And I hope so. To your point, you mentioned campaigning. So I want to just take a break right here. Tell everyone your website, where they can go and where they can support you, because this is important for us to know. Oftentimes, I heard so many people complaining about AIPAC and how much money they were giving to candidates and how they were giving that money to them so they could support what's going on in the Middle East right now. Campaigns run off of money and or volunteerism, like to your point. So tell people where they can go to support your campaign.
Yes, if you go to unitecd1.com, that is where you can go to begin learning about the campaign, but also to support and volunteer or to donate. People have donated from all across the country, and it has been such a blessing and allowed for me to run this tremendous campaign, which has touched hearts. From near, far, and wide. It really has been such a blessing to so many people and encourage people to run for office as well. So please go to unitecd1.com to get involved with my campaign and see how you can be a part of this goal and this mission.
Well, I just put that in the chat. I
Thank
wanted to
you.
make sure that you and I spoke today, and I want to do this at least once a month between now and
Yeah.
November. I really would like to get you and Jonathan on because I was trying to get him to come back on WVON the last time we spoke. He was supposed to come on and debate me about environmental racism. I was really looking forward to that conversation, but he never came
What
back.
is that?
I don't know. I guess I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, because everything is racism with Democrats,
Yeah.
and it's not.
We can talk
That's
about
why people are.
environmental like infrastructure breakdowns, but environmental racism, like okay.
It's so ridiculous, but
Yeah.
let's. I want to continue to bring you back to this platform because I
Yes.
want to amplify your candidacy. People have to know that they have
Mhm.
another choice that is a laudable, that is an effective and efficacious choice in Christian Maxwell.
Yes. Your choice is power. So having the right to choose the candidate that actually works for you is all I want to see. So we just need to have more people who take a chance on themselves so you can have real people start to populate Congress and Congress will start to reflect real people issues. That's the goal. Real people going to Congress, real people becoming aldermen, real people running for public office all across the city.
I had to put this up for you so you can see this really quickly. A correctional officer just posted he's a member of the barbecue group of serious drill masters, and he's going to
Real,
promote and support your campaign with donations too. We are a serious group who enjoy the art of barbecueology.
you know what? My husband might have to come join you all. He loves to smoke some meat as well. I'm ready for summer just so I can start eating smoked ribs and all of those things.
Oh, see, look, I
Yeah.
could look. See, so I'm no correctional officer. Piggyback this. Real barbecuers barbecue 12 months out of the year. I don't
Oh,
care if there's snow on the ground. I will throw a brisket on in the middle of February. I do not care.
you're not wrong. It's gonna take a whole bag of pellets, but it'll get done. You're gonna go through a whole bag and a half trying to keep that grill going.
Christian Maxwell, I am so glad that you joined us tonight. Let's do this again soon.
Yes.
You got a salute from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I truly do.
Yeah. We're going to continue to do this. Like I said, I don't want to keep you any longer. It's been an hour.
Yeah,
so you have a great evening, and my team will be in touch.
Okay, thank you. I'll definitely share this around. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christian. That's Christian Maxwell, everybody. Again, really great candidate and just really a good person. I mean, you're listening to that, watching her and interacting in that interview. Even though she's a Republican, you can't have. It would be inappropriate, I think, to just pigeonhole Christian Maxwell as some far right whatever because she just so happens to have conservative views and be in the Republican Party. We've got to do a better job, I think, of understanding that. Thanks for sharing your ideals with us, Miss Maxwell. Salute, brother. I still have you. Hey, we getting together on the barbecue, brother. Don't worry about that at all. Absolutely, we are. Let's go on real quickly. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do have to talk about this crazy story that happened in Chicago. Let me cue this up. Some of you might have seen this story, but we've got to talk about this. This is just getting out of hand in Chicago. Just the violence, but this story was really, really crazy. Take a look at this.
Murder of a beloved Chicago developer as the two men accused of killing him faced a judge today. RSL Rezai was in the courtroom for us, and Asal prosecutors say it took just a few seconds for these men to get out of their car, commit the murder, and then end up in handcuffs.
Yeah, Marie, that's right. 8 seconds to be exact. And prosecutors referring to those suspects as assassins in court today. They say they were essentially caught red-handed, not only by surveillance cameras, but by Chicago police officers who happened to be on patrol and saw the murder happen.
In court today, prosecutors breaking down the details they say placed 28-year-old Nassie Mason and 31-year-old Irving Harris at this crime scene on Madison near Levitt.
I'm sorry, lost volume. I'm sorry. Let me go back real quick. I'm trying. That's what happens sometimes when you're doing everything when you're a one man band. But I was talking about these two gentlemen here. These two gentlemen who are in custody right now, and they allegedly shot and killed Jerry Lewis, 67-year-old man who hired them and was giving them a second chance at life after they got. Everybody, can you hear me now? I see a couple of people put it in there, and I think I unmuted it. I see my volume on this end. Can you hear me? Just confirm that you can hear me now. I apologize for that. Patah or yeah, okay, Savannah. Okay, I'm back. Good. So these two men were ex-felons, and they were sitting in a car in broad daylight with masks on and latex gloves. They were in a stolen Honda with stolen license plates. The police see them sitting in the car with the masks on and the gloves on, and then immediately when they go in and they shoot this 67-year-old real estate developer who gave them a second chance, they were apprehended immediately, and allegedly they went in and killed the person who gave them a second chance. So when I look at the Safety Act, and when I look at this general sentiment in Chicago, especially from Brandon Johnson, where they just want to give any and everybody a second chance, there are consequences for your actions. You can go to jail and serve your time, but that does not mean that you get to start over like you don't have a history, like you didn't actually commit these crimes. And both of these gentlemen had been on crime, had been arrested multiple times. They've got long rap sheets. And this guy, Jerry Lewis, out of the kindness of his heart, gave them a second chance, and they still messed up. Tell me in the chat, do you sitting in there, they were sitting in the car for 90 minutes. Thank you, Regina Gibson. They were sitting in the car for 90 minutes in broad daylight, 2:00 in the afternoon, with masks and latex gloves on. So these guys should win the Darwin Award just for doing that. But again, apprehended immediately. I don't even have any confidence that, who knows what's going to happen, if they're going to be given bail or if they're going to have to sit in jail. But take a look at this other story. This is an older one. But this is another similar story of, I think, just bending over backwards for criminals. We just have this ethos right now in Chicago or in Illinois generally, where we just want to like I said, just give criminals every single opportunity. And it's to the detriment of the rest of us who are law-abiding citizens. Take a look at this. This is an older story.
Pritzker pictured alongside a peacekeeper 6 days after this photo was taken. Court records claim this man, listed as both Keller and Kellen McMiller, was part of a violent crash and grab on Michigan Avenue that killed a young father-to-be. Chicago police say it was a squad of 7 who shattered the Michigan Avenue storefront of Louis Vuitton and sped off with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of designer goods, killing a father on September 11th. Police say this man, listed as both Keller and Kellen McMiller, pictured here for a prior arrest, was one of the fleeing thieves. Court records show McMiller had outstanding warrants in Cook County, Florida, Wisconsin, and Indiana.
If we can solve the problem.
Days earlier, McMiller had posed with Governor J.B. Pritzker at an event with peacekeepers. In a statement to ABC7 in response to our email asking about the picture with McMiller, Pritzker's office said in part, "We were extremely troubled to learn that this individual was arrested for his alleged involvement in this serious crime, and we expect them to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law."
So you look at that story, and that man, he actually had active warrants in other states when he took that picture with J.B. Pritzker. And then while he's working as a Chicago violence interrupter or peacekeeper, he goes on that smash and grab at the Louis Vuitton store. The Chicago has given over $1 billion to these CVIs. That's taxpayer money that they are giving to these organizations that are hiring criminals under the guise of they're going to go out there and protect the neighborhood because they're going to convince gangbangers not to go out there and to commit crimes. And we have to have this serious, honest conversation in the Black community. And this is not just a Chicago thing. You got CVIs in Philadelphia, New York, and Los Angeles. You got them all over the country. They're mostly in blue cities and blue states. And they're just taking taxpayer money and just giving these people checks so that they can go out and talk to gangbangers and trade on their cred to try and convince them not to go out and do whatever it is they're about to do, break the law, go kill somebody, go carjack somebody. I think that's a waste of money. We should be giving that money to law enforcement and letting law enforcement do a better job. Give them the tools so that they can hold people accountable. But that's the question in the Black community that we have to ask ourselves right now. Have we created an environment of zero accountability so that what's the motivation for people to improve their behavior if they're not going to be held accountable? I for one, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like I said, great job, great post, Regina Gibson, when she said they were sitting there for over an hour. They were sitting in that car for 90 minutes and killed a 67-year-old successful Black man who hired them and gave them a second chance. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Finally, any of you who have been traveling, you know what's going on with TSA. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what's going on with TSA right now. You've got lines, people standing in lines for hours. But there's this really, really sad story of this married couple who both of them have worked for the TSA for over 10 years. You've got to take a listen at this. This is really, really a heart-wrenching story.
Our next guests will now have to choose between showing up to work or feeding their young kids. Oksana and Daron Kelly are married and have been TSA officers for about a decade now. And this shutdown is impacting their entire family. Neither one of them is getting paid, but they still have to show up to work, even though it's not paying the bills. And they're worried about rent, food, and now their son's 7th birthday. It's today. And they wanted to take him to a trampoline park, but sadly, they say they can't afford to do that. Oksana and Daron Kelly join me now from Orlando. Boy, Oksana, let me start with you, Mom. How did you explain to your son that you can't celebrate his birthday the way he wants to? And how did that go over?
I think during the shutdown, this is probably the hardest thing I have to do. Sorry, I was not planning on crying at all. I think having to explain to him that Mommy and Daddy go to work, but not bringing any money in. And, you know, he's been asking about birthday trampoline park for probably since his last birthday. And, you know, he was getting excited and he's like, is this something we're doing? And we're like, sorry, buddy, you know, this birthday is going to be at the community park because Mommy and Daddy can't afford trampoline park.
That's just a heart-wrenching story that you've got two people working for TSA, worked there for over 10 years, and they haven't been paid in over a month. They've missed 2 or 3 paychecks because the Democrats are holding up this funding of the Department of Homeland Security because they don't like what's going on with ICE. So since everybody hates Donald Trump stepped it up. And what did he do? He's going to try and intervene to make sure that these people actually get paid. And, you know, like I said, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not MAGA. I'm not any of that. But I have to say that when someone does something good, that you have to acknowledge it. This is Donald Trump's reaction to the Democrats and what they're trying to do, holding up the funding on this bill.
We have more breaking news to get to. President Trump has signed an executive order to pay TSA workers. It comes after we keep seeing these long lines at security, really all across the country, locally. We have News 4's Paisley Chang live at LaGuardia Airport with how things are looking right now. Paisley.
Well, Natalie, you know, no one was getting paid today. And so we saw a lot of lines here at LaGuardia. And I actually got on one of the TSA security checkpoint lines to see for myself how long the wait would be. I wasn't really sure how long I would have to wait. At 11 a.m., the general screening line snaked inside.
Let me jump ahead really
but
quickly.
Not ICE. That bill is dead in the House.
This gambit that was done last night is a joke. I'm quite convinced that it can't be that every Senate Republican read the language of this bill.
The fight in Washington, no help in Queens.
It's pretty overwhelming. Yeah, at this point, like, I don't know how.
It's long overdue. It should have been done weeks ago. I mean, I'm a firm believer the House and Senate shouldn't get paid.
And he made an excellent point right there. What are your thoughts about that? I think if there's a government shutdown because Congress can't get their act together, they should not be getting a paycheck if government workers are not getting a paycheck. That might be the incentive for them to get their stuff together, because we already pay them to pass the laws to make things convenient for us as the taxpayers. So you've got people inconvenienced across the entire country. They can't board planes because the people we're paying won't pass the bill to pay the people who work at the airports. And then people get mad because Donald Trump dispatched ICE. So he just said, hey, I'm going to just go around Congress. I'm just going to sign an executive order. This is one of those times where I think, yes, go ahead and sign the executive order. At least he's trying to get something done. But the Democrats are just using TSA workers, some of whom have quit, none of whom have gotten paid. It's not fair for Democrats to use them as pawns because they don't like what Donald Trump is doing and using ICE and going after illegal immigrants. It's just such a dysfunctional system. But let me know your thoughts. I think at the very, very least, if Congress can't pass their laws and do their job, they shouldn't get paid, just like no other federal people are getting paid. It's really just unfortunate. Dexter C posted the word on that, paying the TSA workers. Haven't heard a follow up on it. So yeah, Donald Trump is signing that executive order. Let me do this. We're at the end of the show. I don't want to hold you too much longer because I kept Christian Maxwell on. I really enjoyed having that conversation with her. And I want to give a shout out to Corey Hall because he sent a $10 Cash App last week. So I wanted to make sure that I gave a shout out to him. Before we close it out, let me go ahead and play from our sponsor really quickly. Our sponsor is Maytag Laundry. And I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to see this commercial from our sponsor. Thank you to Maytag Laundry for sponsoring the David Seaton Show. If you are a person out there, especially to our seniors and to our single mothers or just families who are just busy at home, you can go to www.maytaglaundryservice.com and they will do a pickup from your home, wash your laundry, and then deliver it back to your home. That's one less thing you have to be worried about. But especially for local businesses, whether you're a bar, whether you're an assisted living facility, whether you're a spa, if you're a private team and you need somebody to launder your uniforms, this is the laundry partner with whom you want to work. And right now, you can use customer code NEWCUSTOMER10 and receive a 10% discount on your first order. So I really appreciate everybody hanging out. Like I said, do me a favor. You can support this show. Obviously, you can subscribe. For any of you who are not subscribed, do me a favor. That's the easiest thing you could do is just subscribe to the show. Leave a like, share it, obviously. But if you want to monetarily support the show, because that's what keeps the lifeblood of everything that we're doing going, that's what keeps the lights on. You can, you can do a super thanks through YouTube, or you can support the show at Venmo at DA Seaton or at Cash App, The David Seaton Show. I appreciate everybody hanging out. Like I said, we're going to continue to do these shows. We're going to be doing live Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. So turn your notification bell on because that's how you'll know who we'll be interviewing on Tuesday. I really appreciate everybody hanging out. And special shout out, like I said, to Republican Christian Maxwell. I really wish her the best. And thank you for all of the Zelle. Regina, I forgot. You did tell me, Zelle. And I apologize. You know what? I'm going to put something in the chat for you really quickly, Regina. You can send a Zelle actually to my parent company, and you can find me on Zelle. You can search this email address, and when you search that email address, it will come up as Seaton Enterprises. So if you do want to support this show through Zelle, you can use Seaton Enterprise, Seaton.david.a@gmail.com, and it will come up as Seaton Enterprises. Or you can use, like I said, you can use Zelle there, you can use Venmo, DA Seaton, and you can use the $ the David Seaton Show at Cash App. And thank you, correctional officer. Look, man, you and I have got to hook up, brother, because you've been a really great supporter of the show. Regina, same thing. Thank you, Regina. And special shout out to Savannah. Where did she go? Savannah had a post up here earlier in the show. She's watching all the way from Ohio. She is a college student, and I actually met her through a mutual friend. I really appreciate you, Savannah, supporting us all the way from Ohio. Do me a favor, share the show. We want to grow this live. I want to bring as much value to these lives as possible. And if you have a show idea or something that you want us to cover, you can email me directly at thedavidseatonshow@gmail.com. That's thedavidseatonshow@gmail.com. Go ahead, enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, and we will see you on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Thanks, everybody, so much, and have a great evening.